This is Duke University.
This project is, David and I are working on sort of a multi-paper project. And the sort of starting point, or one of the key motivations for this project, is thinking about the long-run determinants of inequality. And this is just one way to think about the course of inequality over the 20th century. And so the measure here is what percent of income is earned by the top 1% of income earners in a country. And we have it somewhere in the early 20th century through 2000. And this, of course, comes from the Top Incomes Project, mostly by Atkinson and Piketty and others. And there's really two striking features, I think, of this graph. And the first is just the extent of variation over time. There are massive changes over the course of the 20th century in the extent of this measure of inequalities. So we're starting out with between 15 and 25% of income is going to the top 1%, and then over the course it varies clear down to most countries being right between 5 and 10% in around 1980. The other key thing is how much to notice, of course, is how much the common trends here are at least as interesting as the cross-national variation, which is something, this kind of change over time, and the common trends is something in some ways that is often seems to be of second order of interest, but substantively here I think it's really important. So our project really starts exactly where this explanation leaves off. So the political economy question, which we think is at the moment really unanswered in the top incomes literature, is why progressive taxation then? Because it seems to be a key part of thinking about the long-run determinants of inequality over the course of the 20th century. So when we look to, there's of course many theories about why progressive taxation, but we want to really focus on the most influential in our minds in the political economy literature for a starting point, and the first and most obvious one is expansion of the franchise, and that is simply as we democratize and as poorer voters get the vote, we expect more progressive taxes to be adopted. And then the second argument is, of course, highly and closely related, and it's just a little twist. It says, well, it's not exactly when we immediately see the expansion of the franchise. It takes a little time. Party organizations have to get going, and it's only once the left gets in power that we see highly progressive taxes being adopted. And so what we want to do in this paper is explore an argument that may be complementary, or it may be an alternative argument to these sort of pretty influential ways of thinking about the sources of progressive taxation. And that is, we want to entertain the possibility that participation in mass warfare creates demands for increased tax progressivity as a means for ensuring equal sacrifice between those who fight and those with high incomes. And essentially what the argument is that mass war changes public preferences about what counts as a fair and equitable tax system, and that this changes then the politics of tax setting in a direction that's more progressive. The question for today, which is, what accounts for variation in the taxation of inherited wealth over the last 2 centuries? Well, inheritance tax is not the most interesting topic, I will admit. But so why do we want to study them? Well, I think they're important for 2 reasons. First of all, they're clearly another policy instrument which affects the distribution of wealth. And it can have a huge effect on sort of the equality of opportunity around across generations. And so if what we're arguing is true, that there's a preference for greater progressive taxes, we would expect changes in inheritance taxes to change as a result of wars as well. So One, it's just another policy instrument for progressive taxation. The second one, which I think is important, is I got to reverse field slightly. And one of the things that happened in the income tax paper that was a bit surprising is that the results for both expansion of the suffrage and the partisan arguments, so democratization and partisan hypotheses, are quite mixed. Well, I would say with respect to democratization, they're mixed, and with respect to partisanship, there's just nothing there. Now, the correct interpretation of that is not that partisanship doesn't matter, because any sort of case study work, which we did do for that paper as well, it is an argument of the left, without a doubt. But what is happening is when you have these wars, preferences are shifting across. Everyone's shifting leftward. And what happens is you have conservative and left, right and left governments adopting the more progressive taxes. And then as far as why you don't see it in non-war times, anyway, there's no results there. Similarly for, there's mixed results for democratization. Now, the paper is not designed really to estimate those things. The parallel trend, that's all about like getting a good estimate of the war effect and doing all sorts of observable implications for the war effect. So in some ways, we didn't make anything of it in the paper, but it is an interesting question to explore further.
Produced by Duke University, online at duke.edu.